I'm gonna show you how great I am.
Everything around you that you call life was made up by people that were no smarter than
Everybody has time. Stop watching Lost.
I love what I do, and that's why I'm doing what I love.
Hey guys, welcome to the Student Side Hustle. This week I'm speaking to Amanda Rizo. So Amanda is a Team 3DNJ mental health counselor, and I am very excited to speak to her because we've got a very few interesting topics that I wanted to speak about for a while now, because I think they're things that I'm personally interested in, and they're things that I think don't get talked about. I mean, people touch on things like mental health, but I don't think they really go in depth and actually explain how you can practically do something, because it's like, it seems like nowadays everyone's struggling with something in terms of mental health, and it's like we don't even, it's like we say, oh, mental health, care about each other, but then we don't go in depth. So I think, yeah, this is what we're going to try and do today, but in terms of a vast array of topics, so we'll see where we go. But Amanda, how did you get to where you are today, and how did you start doing what you're doing now?
Yeah. Well, first off, I want to say thank you, James, for having me here on the podcast.
My pleasure.
Very excited. And, well, let's get started. Well, way back in the day. Actually, my story began when I was 6 years old. I began playing the violin, and I grew up thinking that I was going to become some world-class violinist, traveling the world and playing in a symphony. Lo and behold, when I got into college, my undergraduate, I studied at Florida State University. And my first 2 years there, I started developing an eating disorder. Yeah, it was very severe. I developed anorexia nervosa, and pretty much my violin playing became almost a chore. It was very negative. I would self-critique myself, even in the practice room, not necessarily in performances, but it was very based off how I did, and how I did, whether it was decent or bad, I would internalize it. And so that career path was becoming not what I wanted, not what I thought it would be. And so alongside, I was developing this eating disorder, and I went into treatment voluntarily the second year of my undergraduate studies, and had probably the most profound experience I've had yet in my life, where I completely, I guess, reawakened or shifted my mentality and perspective of the world. And coming out of treatment, I wanted to get back. I wanted to repay those who had serviced me in such a positive way, and how I could help kind of this population that's not so much looked at. We know about eating disorders, but a lot of clinicians do not work with them because they're so complex. And actually the highest mortality rate for all mental illnesses. So the stress is high. And given my own experience, I thought that I could play a vital role for at least one person out there. And so when I went back to my undergraduate studies, I had taken a semester off. When I went back, I just said to myself, look, let me give this a try. I switched to psychology. So I majored in psychology, ended up graduating, and moved on towards my master's degree, which was under clinical mental health counseling. And between that time, I had said to myself, let me do this kind of body transformation in the healthy, right mindset. Let me do this, quote unquote, the right way. And I quickly encountered 3DMJ, Lane Norton, Matt Ogus, Omar Isuf, big names that kind of pioneered the scientific evidence field within bodybuilding and just fitness. So I reached out actually to Andrea Valdez, and I was kind of like a big fan of hers. And we just kept in touch through email and, Instagram and YouTube. So one day she messaged me and she asked me to help her out with her website. And I began slowly working with her. And then that transformed to working with 3DMJ, with the social media aspect, and as well as the muscle and strength pyramid, handling kind of the back end work with that. And I was getting my master's degree alongside that. And once I graduated, the topic of conversation with 3DMJ became, why don't we become more holistic? Why don't we provide services that's more well-rounded for our athletes? And it was just kind of a bit of luck that I was in the picture, and here we are today. I'm 3DMJ's mental health consultant, and it's been fabulous working alongside with them.
Yeah, I think they're a very unique team. It's like there's not many people. Like I've now speaking to you, I've spoken to, I think, nearly all of 3DMJ. There's probably someone I don't know about, but I think, and it's like, to me, there's something just fantastic that they've done. I don't know in particular how or why. It's just like, maybe it's the combination of people or something, but it is I cannot speak enough of 3DMJ. Like, I just...
You're repping them now.
Yeah, like I seriously can't put into words like how good they are as a team. And it's like, that's I think it's so rare to find a team like that that's just so like, okay, we get people insanely shredded, jacked, all that, but then they don't ruin their lives doing it. And that's the cool thing. It's like the actual focus on that.
Isn't that great?
Cool. Yeah, it's like, okay, cool. It's nice if you got big pics, but like, are you sad? Like, that's the thing, and that's the thing where I think it's probably reasonably common. Like, I remember when I got into this, I hated how I looked, and for years I did, and even now there'll be days where I'm like, oh fuck, you look small today. So it's like, and I feel like one thing I want to touch on is like, how do you tell the balance between like, okay, this is a body image disorder, and this is an eating disorder. There is an issue here, and like, I'm a guy in fitness and I feel small today. Like, because I think if you look at myself as an example, there'll be days and I'm like, holy shit, I look insane. And then there's other days where I'm just like, fuck, you're tiny. Look at you, you twig. It's like, that's the thing. There's that contrast. How do you know when it is an issue and like when it needs to be dealt with by sort of an outside force?
I first want to say that I would assume, and I'm pretty sure that it's pretty common for people in our realm, fitness realm, they experience the same thing, where they feel they look great one day, and the next day it's kind of like, nah, not looking so hot. However, the line between body dysmorphia and where it becomes an issue is how you process those thoughts.
Yeah.
Because those are simply thoughts. Now, do you internalize that?
What do you mean by
take
that?
Those thoughts?
What do you mean by internalize?
Do you take those thoughts and reflect them onto your self-worth?
Right.
Is it because you look small, you feel you look small today? Do you think that you're not good enough? Do you think that, I don't know, that you're not worthy, that you're not lovable, that you're not good enough for anything? It could be a whole spectrum of things. But is it based on your worth?
And I think that's the thing that I mean, I don't want to turn this into my personal counseling session, but I think I don't care about talking about my stuff, so it doesn't bother me. So
I'm saying like in a general
statement.
Yeah.
I think in general, I would say, if we take me as an example, I would say I used to put it as my self-worth, because when I was a kid, I would get the comments like, "Oh, you're skinny," and they would say it like it was like it was just a cool fact about me. And then for me, it was like crushing, but for the person who said it, they just thought it was a funny thing. And then nowadays, there's so much positive reinforcement that it's very hard for me to feel bad about how I look. So it's like, maybe there's that, But then I know for a fact that I personally am at danger of, if I got an injury and I couldn't lift for 6 months, I know I would feel tiny. And I know every time that I do a deload, I believe when you deload and you're not lifting as much, local swelling goes down, so then basically you look smaller. And then that, I think, is the time when I'm like, oh, fuck, and I feel reasonably bad. Would you say, I mean, it's weird to put it out on the internet saying this, but do you think if you just take my template, do you think that could be something that's relatively problematic, or do you think would that level in most people be fine, or would it be sort of that needs to be looked at, should probably be addressed, or is it dependent on the situation?
I think it's very individualized, and it's hard to say, at least right now, to fully say, okay, this is a problem. I would need like a whole perspective of what's going on. But I would say if there's significant preoccupation with those thoughts and those feelings, and it's causing a lot of distress, then yes, there could be a problem going on or something developing. Developing, excuse me. And it's a matter of what we label. How do we label those thoughts? So what does being small mean to you or someone else? Does it mean you're less than? You're not good enough? Again, it goes back to that preoccupation, that self-worth, self-esteem. What does this mean about me? That I'm not looking full, I'm not looking shredded. And it could go to one end to the other. You know, for guys, it's typically I'm not looking buff, I'm not looking huge, whatever. And for girls, it's I want to be smaller, I want to be thinner, I don't want to have as much body fat.
So I think it's very probably situation dependent. So would you say generally, if there's a large amount of stress associated with it and it's actually causing negative moods in you and making you feel bad, you should probably get it addressed?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's probably
there's significant distress.
Yeah. And then in terms of, because this is something I'm completely unfamiliar with, because for me, in terms of nutrition, all I've literally had to do is I've done one cut and the other 3.5 years was just a bulk. No issues. I didn't care about food. I just ate it. It didn't bother me at all. It's never been a thing for me, and I find it hard to comprehend the either emotions attached to food and all that, because for me it was just, I was at like 50 kilos just bulked, and then I got to the point where I was like, fuck, I hate food now. I just don't want to eat it. And then I did a cut, and now I enjoy food, I can appreciate it, all that stuff. It's never been an issue for me. But how do you know, or how does someone recognize when they have an eating disorder, whether it be, I'm not even too familiar with eating disorders, I'm just familiar with anorexia and not much else actually. Okay.
Well, your experience right there that you shared was basic physiological response. That's a normal physiological response. You know, you get up to a certain point, weight where your body's saying like, okay, this is an excess amount of energy that I need. So cutting back down kind of normalized that and got you back to baseline. Now, in terms of eating disorders, first off, it's not about the food. And that is key, where a lot of people who aren't aware of eating disorders, they focus on it. Same thing with substance use. It's not necessarily about the drug. That's just their mechanism, their mode to express what they're feeling. And a key feature of eating disorders, whether it be anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, binge eating disorder, and there's a few others in the DSM, which is a diagnostic statistical manual, basically like the Bible for practitioners.
The muscle and strength pyramids for...
Yes, there you go. A key feature is a desire for control. And what's basically at the forefront of what we can control is what we intake and what we what would be the opposite? Just do as well. So exercise and what we eat. That's what we can control, because our external environment feels out of control. So it's not about the food. The majority of the time, it's not.
And then is it so the person with the eating disorder generally feels like they're not controlling things around them, so then they try and use the food as the way to control?
It's an illusion. Right. So if I can control this, if I can control this or get to a certain size, whether it be smaller or bigger, I can control what feels out of control in my life.
And
it could be school, it could be a relationship, work, whatever. It could be anything.
And so is it commonly, like, how do they usually onset? Is it, because I know, and I think 3DMJ does a great job of talking about it. Like, I think within bodybuilding and within basically all of fitness, does it commonly correlate with massive stress event, or does it correlate with getting into fitness, or does it correlate with anything, or how does these things generally begin?
So we don't know an exact reason why. It's basically kind of just like a big potion that happens. It's usually a biological component. There's a psychosocial component, so how the person was raised, how they process events, their perspectives, how do they handle stress, cognitive processes, and then usually there is some sort of stressful event that kind of launches it. And that could be contest prep, that could be a loss, whether it's job, a significant other, family member, role transitions. We see a lot from high school, moving on to college, which was my experience. Career changes. It could be a whole plethora of stressful events.
And how would someone go about either recognizing in themselves or in others, and is it even possible to recognize it in others, or is that even, will that help? Because I guess a lot of the time you'll sort of think, okay, they might not want to be helped. Is that the common sort of, if they're not ready, they're not ready, or how do you know when there needs to be an intervention?
How do you know when there needs to be an intervention? It could be at any point in time, honestly. The earlier you catch it, the more success you would have in nipping it in the bud early on. So it's difficult to say, because really, and this goes for almost all mental illnesses, if the person does not want to change, they will not change. However, if you know of someone that is currently struggling through this, don't abandon hope. There are ways to approach it, and I definitely would suggest approaching that individual with kindness and compassion, because they are struggling, and that is their way of handling their stress. As maladaptive as it is, that's the best that they're doing. So they are struggling, and approach that person with compassion and understanding, because they're going through it.
Yeah.
And remember that it's not about the food. So kind of telling them, oh, just eat, or you look fine, it's all in your head. Not for them. For them, it's very, very real and scary.
How do you, because I think I personally struggle with, I think I'm getting better at it, but I think I struggle with empathizing with others if I can't relate to the problem. What would be a decent approach to beginning to even talk to someone that you're close to about this? Like, how do you even begin to bridge that gap?
Right.
Because I think it's obviously a sensitive topic. It's hard to just, it's not something you can just casually bring up.
It is. It's very vulnerable. So I would suggest you don't necessarily need to fully understand why they're doing what they're doing. And a way to kind of bridge that gap would be to express how you feel. How does their behavior or their presentation, how does it make you feel? Not necessarily saying, you make me feel this way, I don't like it, blah, blah, blah. Use I statements like, I don't like seeing you this way. It makes me feel X, Y, Z. I would like to see you, flourish and be doing things that you love doing, whatever it is that you're feeling when you see this individual. So coming from, again, kindness and compassion would be my suggestion.
Yeah, because I think, is there like, in terms of approaching people, is there sort of things or signs that it's is there ever a bad time to approach them and talk about it? Like, is there ever, because I guess it's the kind of thing where it'd probably be the kind of thing people would run through in their heads a billion times to think, okay, how do I bring this up? How do I bring this up? Is there ever, in your experience, has there ever been a wrong time to talk about it? Has there ever been, does it matter? I guess maybe do it in an environment where it's probably just you two, but is there ever like a wrong time?
I'm not too sure if there is a wrong time. I don't think there's a right time. I think the best time would be probably as soon as you could.
And
as soon as you could.
Yeah. And in your experience, is there anything you can do to sort of prompt them along the sort of thought process of changing? Because I guess you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. But is there anything that feels very helpless? Because it's like, oh shit, like I can show them that I'm here holding my hand there, but if they don't want to grab my hand at all, then it feels almost impossible. Is there anything you've found or anything you theoretically think could work in terms of like showing someone change is probably a good idea? Or do you think in their mind, do they think change is dangerous? Or
right, change is scary. It's scary for anyone. It's risky and it's the unknown. I would validate that fear for them, even though for you it might be, plain and simple. But have a discussion about what it is they want. Get down to the root of it, because again, it's not about the food. It's not about being a certain size, a certain body weight, certain musculature. What are they looking for? And what kind of life do they want? What do they enjoy doing? What did they enjoy speaking in the past? Because usually once it escalates, you kind of froze there. I'm not sure if you're
I can hear you.
Catching this. Okay. Once it escalates to a certain point, it's very common for them, for us to see them isolate, stop doing things that they used to be doing, that they enjoyed, typically called anhedonia. Right. So if they can imagine a different reality, you're already off to a good start.
Yeah. So if they can even begin to conceive of why they should change, or do you find commonly, do people know what they're doing is wrong, or do they not see that at all? Or?
It's a little bit mix of both. There are levels of denial, a lot of self-validation and telling themselves like, no, this is fine. Giving yourself reasons and excuses as to, why you should be doing these behaviors. Yeah. But there are levels of insight and awareness. At least for me, like in my experience, I knew that I had an eating disorder and I was struggling, and I just didn't know how to get out. And my awareness was very in my face when I noticed that I had severe anxiety going to social events, especially that it pertained to food. High anxiety if I couldn't exercise. So those types of signs and red flags, I knew I had a problem. And
so I guess the emotion, like I'd never experienced any sort of form of anxiety until around this year. I mean, I won't touch on why it occurs, but it's a fucking scary thing. It's like I never realized how it's not just you're worrying a little bit. It's like everything goes into this one thing, and then all you can think about is this one thing, and you can't escape this. It's like it's like you literally can't do anything else, and I think it's
debilitating.
Yeah, it is. And like, do you feel like, is it common that they'll have some form of like intense emotional sort of what do you call it, cataclysm or whatever that is, like a big intense like bomb of emotion, and then something like that will make it happen?
As far as an event?
Yeah.
I would say this won't apply for all cases, but in general, there are some significant events or traumatic events that occurred in someone's life that may have transpired into an eating disorder. We do see a lot of comorbidity with eating disorders, as far as dual diagnosis with depression and anxiety, PTSD sometimes, substance use. So they pretty much go hand in hand.
I think that's a scary thing.
OCD as well. Yeah.
Because like, for instance, we touched on something a while ago in class, which was like effectively long-term conditions and depression and anxiety also tie in. I can't remember. Oh, the other one was obesity. So it was those three tie in. And it feels like literally you have one condition, it'll lead to mental health issues. And it's like that then leads to more of that. And it's like, it feels like a
vicious cycle.
Yeah. And is that, like, would you see that in like 90%? Or obviously you don't need to put a number to it, but like just a ton of people where it's like they're struggling in literally all aspects?
Yes. Typically see it's pretty much like a reflex for them if they don't have awareness or other coping skills. It's a reflex. Like, they go through a stressful event, all right, I'm gonna binge, or I'm gonna restrict, or I'm gonna go exercise for 4 hours.
Would it
but
be
like intense?
Yeah, because I see in terms of like, as the friend or as the person near them, say if they're not going to go counseling, they don't want to do that, they won't do it, it's just not in the picture right now, is there anything you can do just to, like, for instance, I was thinking before, is there something you can do to sort of show them the things they used to like doing, or the things that they used to be passionate about? Or is there anything you can do as the friend to do that isn't, you don't need a massive understanding of how it works, but is there anything you can do from that level, and what are the main things you try and do?
Yeah, it goes back to opening dialogue. Have an open conversation about it, and bring your feelings into it as well, and how it would make you feel for them to rejoin you or see them in a certain way. Even model for them, like how it would be, or how you would see them, what you would do, things like that. Be kind of like an encouraging light instead of
critique.
You should do this, you should do that, wagging your finger at them.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that's
because they do that enough themselves.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's like, I think that's something that I've recently had to learn, is like you cannot teach someone to do anything, whether it's fitness, whether it's whatever, if you're just going to critique them 24/7. It's like if you encouragingly pull them in the right direction and show them, and then give them positive feedback when they do something that you think is a good idea, I'd say it's probably like it's just going to work more of the time, because otherwise they're being whipped in the right direction. It's just like doesn't. It's like obviously they're going to just run away from the whip at some point. So it's like
exactly.
Yeah.
Survival mechanism.
Yeah.
And start small too. Start small, because going from, I'm thinking like in a severe case, like just isolating all day and doing ritualistic behaviors to something completely 180. That's like that you're rocking their world there.
Yeah.
They are not gonna. They are not going to be excited about that. So
it's a bit too traumatic.
It's traumatic in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. And then, in terms of something I would like to touch on, is workaholism as well. So, and also something I'd like to tie into that is, there's a lot of things I want to talk about in terms of this, because I think it's something that has struck me quite deeply, I would say. So, in terms of, I don't know if I lost you there. You still there?
Yeah, I caught that last part.
Yeah. Okay, so in terms of workaholism or workaholicism, how do you know when it's an issue? And I guess there's the whole premise of like, as I think the reason, and I think we talked about this a little bit before the show, but in terms of why I think it's such an issue now, is I think you have two situations, right? You have, and it feels so polarizing, right? You either have everyone on one side, and especially, I'm not sure how old you are, but in my age group, my demographic, everyone is like, all you see on Facebook is everyone basically saying, fuck, I hate working, study sucks, I'm so depressed, blah, 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 I hate my job. And it's like unanimous, everyone's like, fuck, I hate working. And it's like that, if you look at any Facebook meme, it's about how they hate their job. And it's just like, oh my God. And it feels so unanimous. And then you have the other half of the spectrum, which is just like work 24/7, Gary V, hustle, grind, team, no days off. It's just like, and then, I mean, I've been in that camp, and I don't think I've really been in the other camp because I quite dislike it. But it's like, it's so polarizing. It feels as though people are doing all the work or none of the work. And it's like, obviously there's a work-life balance that has to exist, and people say, fuck work-life balance, but it's just like, I think that's frankly bullshit. It's just hard to achieve. But how do you know when you're, in terms of being a workaholic, like, is it an issue for most people, and when do people know that it is an issue?
Yeah, I think there's a few things with what you started off saying, as far as people in our generation where I'm 28 years old, so I pretty much a millennial, and I think our generation is stepping out of the whole 9-to-5 normalcy and saying, you know, work sucks, I'm not going to do this. But it's pretty easy to hate your job if you hate your job. If you don't like what you're doing, you're going to hate it, regardless of the time frame or when you go and do it. So, I mean, that would make total sense. I don't hear of people that enjoy their job and relating to those memes necessarily.
Yeah, that's the sad thing. It's like, I don't get how we live in a society where it's like, okay, everyone works. That's just how it is. You have to work to get money and survive.
That's the system, right?
But then, like, people will go and pick a degree that they hate, and then they'll do a job that they hate, and it's like, I don't know, it's just like, come on, like, I picked a degree that I don't like. I study podiatry, which is like feet. So it's like, I liked it at the time. It was really interesting when I started, but now I'm just like, fuck that, I'm not doing that. So now I have a career that I'm aiming for, that I'm going to get, and it's like, it's just going to take a little longer, and it's way harder to get into, and it's way more competitive, but I actually give so much of a fuck about it. But about podiatry, I negatively care about it. I think they do a ton of things wrong, and it's just like that. It's obvious to everyone in my class, and we talked about it many times. I shouldn't be a podiatrist. I should basically be an online bodybuilding coach or something in that regard. It's just like that's all I give a shit about. So it's like for me, it's obvious, and I guess for most people, it's not obvious. But it's like for you, how did you figure out? Oh shit, I want to do this thing, like. It's fantastic to see people who actually give a fuck about what they do.
Right. I would say for me, it's just I took the risk. It's taking risk and finding out for yourself, one, whether or not you really do like it, and two, if you're gonna float, if you're gonna survive in that atmosphere.
That's the thing.
And that kind of trickles into the Gary Vee atmosphere of grind, and where does it stop? Where does it end? And it's very individual. I think it's very individual. Like my level of productivity is going to be different than yours. It's going to be different than Gary, anyone else. However, I would say that it becomes a problem when it's interfering with vital aspects of your life. If you're putting off significant amount of family time, because I can understand, if you're scheduling a podcast, I don't know, during some sort of event, all right, you got to do it.
Yeah.
But if it's continually bringing you away from social relationships and other areas of your life that brought enjoyment, same thing with eating disorders, if it's taking you away from things that also bring you joy, okay, this might be a problem.
And I think it's very hard. I guess for me, it's like it was very one side and then fully the other side. For me, the crutch was like, okay, it's either I'm addicted to work and all I do is work, or it's like the moment I'm not working, I'm playing video games. So for me, it was like intense video game addiction. Here's sort of, I don't know if I've talked about this in the podcast, and it's not like a big deal nowadays, but for me, like, this is scary. Like, it is like me and my brother, right?
I got one too. It's all right.
Yeah, like
it's right over here.
For me, when I was like 16-ish, I had played 300 days of RuneScape in my life. So a shit ton. I was good at RuneScape, but it was all I did. I was the best in my school by far. Like, I shat on everyone. Same with Call of Duty. Like, you add another 200 days for that. And then you add, like, another 100 days for League of Legends. And that's, like, I was, like, 16, 18, 19. I was probably 18 when I stopped really playing video games intensely. And it added up to, like, 600 days of video games played in my life, which was, like, a non-negligible % of my life. Like, I would literally run home to play RuneScape. And I would sneak out of bed at 4 a.m. to play RuneScape. Like, it was fucked. It was just like, it feels like so much of that tied into the work thing. Because it was like, okay, I had to quit the video games, and then the work became the thing. And then
it's synonymous. It's the same behavior, just
exactly
in a more acceptable.
Yeah.
It's more acceptable
it's
in
more promoted,
our society.
Yeah. Is that like is that common? Is that like what happens to a lot of people?
As far as a drastic shift?
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I would say I would ask you, like, what would you be without it?
Yeah, because I remember when I played video games, it was like that was my identity. Like,
right.
Being like, even now, when I said before, like, oh, I was the best kid in school, like, that was my thing. I was like, and I remember I was in year 12 of school. We do it that would be like grades, I have no clue. I would have been like 15 or something, 16 maybe. And I remember I started not being so good at video games, but I still played a shit ton. I played more than everyone else, but I wasn't that good at the particular video game that was cool at that time. League of Legends, for anyone listening. It's like, and then that was like very traumatic for me, because it was like, holy shit, I'm not the best kid in school anymore. And it was like, it was deeply tied to my identity. Like, it was deeply all I gave a shit about.
It boils down to what meaning do you place behind it? Because to you, winning that game or whatever it was for that, it meant everything to you. It meant who you were, how good you were. It gave you purpose. And how easily you shifted that to something else. Versus someone else that has no meaning for them and something else does.
Yeah.
Did I lose you?
No. So that then in terms of like,
okay,
is that generally a good outline for when it's an issue, whether it's addiction to something or whether it's addiction to work? Is workaholism just basically addiction to work?
I would say so, but I mean, we're all addicted to something, whether it's being addicted to being super chill and, oh, I don't care, have a laissez-faire type of point of view. I mean, that's your addiction, right? So where do we find, I guess, where we can function productively and happily and healthfully.
Yeah, and I think that's...
Wait, did you catch all that?
Somewhat. Do you want to go back to like 15 seconds ago?
What did I even say? So, okay. So anything that we do is pretty much, it can be addictive, and we're all addicted to something. Now, how can we flourish in that addiction in a way that is productive, healthy, and we're being our best selves? We're not stifling like other areas in our lives.
Is that generally, like, I find what I've learned is sort of, it feels like most of these things, the general sort of red markers to know when it's an issue is when if it's taking precedent, or the addiction or the eating disorder or the thing is taking precedent over a major other area. So it's like if it disrupts whatever else,
right, impairing areas of your life.
Yeah, then is that generally a good marker for when it's wrong and then something needs to change? But do people ignore those markers, or do they not see them, or do they, like, I know personally for me, there was a time when I could not value friends because I valued work too much, and it was just like I was like 19 and I didn't give a fuck about having friends. Like, you're meant to be super social then, but it's like I thought it was useless. Like, and whenever I was hanging out with anyone, I'd be like, oh fuck, I could be working right now. This is not productive. This is not a productive use of my time. And it was like, I think it was very fueled by that whole Gary V thing of like, okay, you got to sacrifice, but it's like, okay, how much? Like, realistically,
right? Realistically, how much? And what is your worth without being productive? Like, if you weren't productive, who are you?
Yeah.
What are you? Like, what is your worth? And intrinsically, it's you do have worth. Whether or not you produce some mass podcast or a coaching business, that's just what you do is a positive influence to your life.
How do you go
and that's
about, like,
why you do it.
Yeah, it's like I think a lot of, especially like youngish people, I think we don't know what's normal. For instance, it's like we don't know what a normal level is, because I think everything's so misconstrued now, and it's like on social media. And I mean, I don't think social media is the worst thing in the world, but I think I get a good portion of social media because of the people I follow. So it's I don't get the worst bits of it, and I don't care for the influencers. Like I don't give a shit. So it's like, that's the thing. I feel like it's like the whole, everything's misconstrued and everything is displayed in either the perfect physique or the perfect work or the success or whatever, and you never get the actual reality. Like how do you go about finding that reality, or like what is normal-ish? Because it's like I've had to do it through just talking to people who I know are just normal people and just actually being vulnerable in the conversation and talking to them in the conversation and just not having a wall up when I'm talking to them and just expressing some vulnerability, and then they express some back, and I feel like that's how the friendships deepen, and then then you can sort of learn what's normal.
Yeah, I would say trust what you're feeling. Trust whatever you're experiencing externally, whether it's the influencers or something at work or at school. How is this making me feel? Is what I'm doing making me feel good or not so good? If it's not so good, shift, do something else. Because emotions are simply feedback. They just tell us what we do or do not accept.
I agree. I think it's something that I think a lot of people ignore, and I think I'm guilty of ignoring too, because I think you'll see the thing and you just think, oh, this is terrible, and then not think, why did I have that emotion? Like, not put the two and two together. And I think,
or that judgment.
Yeah. Is it common for people to just ignore it, or like, and why do people just ignore the thing that's going on? Or, and then I guess, is that denial? Or
it's easier to ignore it than go through the process of whatever it is.
Yeah. And I guess is that the thing with all of this, is sort of the horse being the person needs to be led to water, and then they need to drink the water themselves. And it's
right. It's safe. It's safe being the same.
Yeah.
Being stagnant. Yeah. Vulnerability, change, risk. That's all scary.
Yeah.
It's kind of against our just biological makeup in a way.
And then in terms of like resources and places people can go, is there any things you found have been good for these specific topics, or any, I don't know, YouTube channels or books or places people can go to if they think they might have something like this, or someone around them, or something like that? Anything you've really found has been quite a good resource to just throw at people?
Yeah, there. Simply type in eating disorder in Google, and the National Association for Eating Disorders will pop up, and that's an excellent resource, absolute excellent resource, as well as Psychology Today. You can find therapists in your local area, if that's what you're interested in. What are others? Some 3DMJ is great.
I agree. Yeah, I definitely concur.
And you can look up if you have insurance, if you have the privilege of having insurance, you could just give them a call and they'll link you up to some mental health professionals in your area.
And then we'll finish off with this. In terms of, because I think there's a reasonably large stigma around it, how do you get around the whole, or how do you commonly find people, what is the general gist of the stigma in terms of going to counseling? Because I know there's a lot of people that think, oh shit, if I go to counseling, I'm weak, or I'm bad, or
something's wrong with me.
Yeah.
You don't need to go to therapy if you have like some sort of mental illness. You can go if you're just experiencing stress, if you're expecting like a life transition to come up, if you're wanting to process grief or loss, if you want to achieve a goal and you want some, I guess, mental tools to help you or supplement you in a way, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are less than or something is wrong with you because you go to therapy. Not at all. Not at all. And you don't need to feel that you need to get to a certain point, if that makes sense. You need to get really bad to go to therapy.
Yeah, I think that's the interesting thing. Is like for me, I found, like, I went to a counselor maybe 4 months ago. I started going to counselor and I went for like 2 months or so, and it was like, at the start, I was like, I'm not that bad, but I know something's heading in the wrong direction, so I just went. And then by the end of it, I was like, oh, cool. I feel like now I can handle the thing that's going on.
Yeah.
And it was like, I don't feel like I was that fucked up, but it was like I had something that was making me feel shit consistently, and it was like that was a pretty good reason to go. It's like
that's almost like preventative care.
Yeah, and it worked like a charm, and it was just like, I mean, I don't think me and the counselor were like that perfectly matched, but it still worked fantastically. Huh? And like, do you agree with the whole like find a counselor that works for you, or how does that sort of thing work in terms of finding the right counselor?
I do, and the research also supports that having a good relationship and good rapport with your therapist pretty much determines the success of therapy. You can utilize whatever modality or evidence-based modality that you want. If the therapist's relationship with the client is not that great, the success of the therapy is kind of just like 50-50 at best.
Right. So it's like it's pretty vitally important.
It's very vital for the client to feel safe, validated, not judged. And then that's very important.
Is there any way, I guess, because the only way I can think of is literally going to the therapist, seeing how you feel, and then trying another one or something or whatever. How do you know? Is there anything you can do to sort of know if someone's going to be right for you? I guess maybe it's just trial and error.
It's a little bit of trial and error, yeah. Sometimes you know from the first session. Sometimes you just gotta have a groove. It's kind of it's like any relationship, even though it's primarily one-sided. But there is a relationship. There is kind of a bond that forms.
I think that's the cool thing. It's like, I remember with my therapist, I don't think we meshed perfectly, but I think that we had a lot of similar character traits, and we gave it, we cared about similar things. And it was like, I would bring up a book and he'd be like, oh yeah, I love that book, like something like that. And it was like, that was kind of cool, just to be able to have that that connection,
mutual understanding.
Like, yeah, and like he get where I was coming from in terms of my life, what I want to do, and it was like, that was cool. Instead of just being like, oh yeah, you want to do a weird entrepreneurial thing? That's weird. Cool. Anyway, get on with the therapy. It's like, it was cool to have that sort of.
Yeah. I'm not saying that you need to be best friends. Don't expect that. Best friends with your therapist, but yeah, like I said, mutual understanding, where you feel comfortable, you feel good, you're able to be vulnerable with them.
And then, in terms of you, where can people find you online? Where can people find everything that you do?
Sure. So you can definitely find me on the 3DMJ website, and you can also contact me through email, which is amirizo027@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram, and my handle is Rizo Monster, Rizo Monster.
So cool, fantastic. And is there any products or anything you want to pimp?
No, I don't have any products, but you can check out my other podcasts and blog at the 3DMJ website.
Hey guys, thank you very much for listening to this episode. I hope you give us a review or you really enjoyed the episode. Let me know any feedback. I'm always open to any criticism, anything like that. Reach out to me on Instagram at James_Walsham, or if you'd like to follow my business account, follow at the Hypertrophy Hub. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you would like to help the show, there's a list of ways to do so in the show notes, but if you're wondering how, the best thing to do is just give us a review on iTunes or just let me know how the show can be improved. Thank you very much.